They found her under the building. 14 years after she disappeared, a construction crew renovating a dormitory at Whatcom Community College began breaking through a ground-floor concrete slab. Their equipment was industrial, loud, indifferent, the kind of machinery that doesn't know what it's looking for, only what it's been told to remove. The concrete cracked in long gray fractures. Workers guided the process with practiced ease, thinking about nothing in particular. The end of shift, whether it would rain again, and then something purple appeared in the rubble. For 14 years, students walked through that building. They ate in the lounge. They argued about finals. They fell asleep with music playing. Kaylee was under their feet the entire time. A purple JanSport backpack, battered and waterlogged after 113 days, sealed beneath concrete. The initials KRM embroidered on the front pocket, put there years earlier by a grandmother who wanted her granddaughter's belongings to find their way home. They had finally, in the worst way. Beside the backpack, a silver cross necklace, tarnished after 14 years underground, but the chain was unbroken. The design was simple. It was the kind of necklace a mother gives a daughter at confirmation, pressing it into her hands and saying, "Wear this, it will protect you." Rosa Martinez had been saying it for years, said it again the last Sunday she saw Kaylee, straightening the chain against her daughter's throat the way mothers do, not knowing it would be the last time. The necklace didn't protect her, but it stayed. And it was how they knew before the dental records confirmed it on February 9th, before the official notification, before any of the machinery of forensic certainty ground through its protocols. Rosa Martinez saw a photograph of that cross and she knew, the way mothers know. The way she had known on an October Sunday in 2010 that something was wrong when the phone didn't ring at 6 o'clock and kept not ringing, and the world kept getting quieter and quieter until the silence was unbearable. Kaylee Rose Martinez was 19 years old when she disappeared on October 15, 2010. Before we go further, if you're new here, this channel covers cases like Kaylee's, the ones that took years to crack, the ones with witnesses who stayed silent, the ones where justice finally arrived but never fully healed what it broke. If that's the kind of storytelling you're looking for, subscribe now and turn on notifications. There are more cases like this one waiting for you. Now, let's go back to the beginning. She had been a sophomore at Whatcom Community College, a children's library volunteer, a girl who texted her brother motivational quotes every morning before his high school classes, a girl who wore mismatched socks on purpose and called it her rebellion. She wanted to be a bilingual preschool teacher. She wanted to visit Spain, where her mother's family came from. She had $2,400 saved toward a car, and 16 days before she was going to submit her transfer application to Western Washington University. She never got to submit it. Kaylee's roommate, her best friend at Whatcom CC, the girl who shared room 247 of Seaview Residence Hall, who ate breakfast with her twice a week and watched reality television with her on Sunday nights, was outside the party when it happened. She watched Kaylee get into his truck. She thought, good, she got a safe ride home. She went back inside. She didn't tell anyone for 14 years. The phone alarm played "Here Comes the Sun." It had been her alarm since freshman year, chosen deliberately, a small act of optimism she performed for herself every morning. You set the alarm the night before with whatever mood you're hoping to wake into. Kaylee always hoped for sun, even in Bellingham, even in October. Even when the Pacific Northwest October had been doing what it always did, pressing down on the town with a flat gray sky the color of wet concrete, mist hanging in the air that wasn't quite rain but was never quite not rain either. It was 6:30 a.m. Her hand shot out from under the comforter and hit snooze, a habit, not an intention. She never actually snoozed. Her eyes were already open. 3 seconds after her hand dropped back to the mattress, she was sitting up, rubbing both fists against her eyes the way she'd done since childhood, the gesture of someone who wakes fighting rather than easing into consciousness. This was Kaylee, punctual to a fault, anxious about lateness in a way that ran deeper than preference, that lived somewhere in her chest as a low hum she could never fully silence. Her feet hit the floor exactly 45 seconds after the alarm. She touched the silver cross at her throat, 3 quick taps with her index finger, the pads of her fingertips pressing the metal in sequence like a piano chord. An unconscious ritual the same every morning. The cross that had been her grandmother's before her mother's before hers, the cross that had become so much a part of her body's routine that she checked it the way other people check their breathing, involuntary, compulsive, the body confirming its own continuity. I am here, I am here, I am here. She made the bed first. Always hospital corners. The sheet pulled taut and smooth in the way that had driven her college roommate initially crazy, and now Jenna didn't even notice anymore. Had assimilated it as one of the textures of living with Kaylee, like the faint strawberry smell of her shampoo that lingered in the hallway after she passed, like the soft, tuneless humming that announced her approach from 20 feet away. The bed had to be made before anything else. This was not something Kaylee had ever examined or explained. It simply was. The bed made, then the day could begin. She opened the closet. The gray sweatshirt hung near the front where she always put it after washing within easy reach, not because it was her most comfortable or her warmest, but because it was the one she had bought for herself as a kind of promise. Western Washington University. Block letters across the chest, small WW shield above the left breast pocket. A size small because she'd ordered it before she arrived and hadn't known what size she'd be by the time she got there. She wore it Fridays. She called it future school pride. She had been wearing it for 8 months every Friday without exception, as though wearing the sweatshirt was a form of manifesting, as though the university on her chest would recognize her as belonging there eventually if she just kept showing up. She pulled it on. Dark wash skinny jeans. White Converse sneakers. The left one had a coffee stain on the toe from 3 weeks ago that she'd scrubbed it twice and couldn't quite get out. The shoelaces were fraying at the ends and she kept meaning to replace them. The left shoe also squeaked slightly with each step on wet pavement, a small percussive sound that had become part of the auditory signature of Kaylee Martinez on her morning walk to campus. She checked the mirror, tucked her hair behind her right ear twice. Quick the way she did when something felt slightly off or slightly formal, a gesture she wasn't aware of making. Applied 2 pumps of strawberry hand lotion, rubbing it thoroughly into her fingers between each one until the scent rose warm and sweet in the small dorm room. She ran the lotion check consciously. 10 times a day minimum, hands get dry. She was organized about this the way she was organized about everything, index cards in her back pocket. Color-coded planner in her backpack, 3 alarms set the night before even though she'd never needed the second or third one. Organization as anxiety management. The world was more bearable when it was sorted. She checked her phone. A text from Marco sent late last night, 11:47 p.m. after she'd already gone to sleep. Did you finish that essay yet? Teach me your ways, lol. She had replied this morning at 7:55 a.m. Before she'd even fully woken, her thumb finding the keyboard by muscle memory. Not yet, tomorrow, you can help this weekend. His response had come while she was in the shower, 8:02 a.m. Deal, love you weirdo. His response had come while she was in the shower, deal, love you weirdo. She read it now and felt the particular warmth of sibling love which is different from all other loves, unsentimental, slightly ridiculous, deep as bedrock. Marco was 16. A junior at Sehome High School, worried about his essays because she'd told him to worry about his essays because she was the first one through this door and he was watching her to see how it was done. She texted him a motivational quote every morning before his classes. She had been doing it since the beginning of the school year. She never missed. She never got to help him that weekend. 7:52 a.m. Starbucks. Kelly the barista already reaching for her cup. The walk to Starbucks took exactly 7 minutes. 4 blocks. Left on High Street, right on Holly, the Starbucks on the corner where the smell of roasting coffee reached you half a block before the door. Kaylee walked it every single weekday morning, had walked it enough times that her body knew the route without consulting her mind, leaving her free to look at other things, the seagulls crying overhead, always present near Bellingham Bay, the foghorn sounding somewhere out on the water, the particular gray-blue light of October dawn that made the town look like a painting of itself. She hummed while she walked, soft and tuneless, not a real melody, just sound, the audible texture of a mind at rest. Her left shoe squeaked on the damp sidewalk in its small, regular rhythm. The mist touched her face and hands. She arrived at 7:52 a.m., within the 2-minute window. of course. Kelly was already reaching for the cup before Kaylee got through the door. Vanilla latte, Kelly said by way of greeting. Extra foam, you know me too well. Kaylee smiled, the left dimple appearing in her cheek, the one that only showed when the smile was real, and took her place in the short morning queue. She pulled out a folded index card from her back pocket. The purple gel pen materialized from somewhere. She stood at the counter reviewing the card, crossing out 2 items that were done, adding one that wasn't. The list was rewritten when it got too messy. She'd been keeping running to-do lists on index cards since 7th grade. The habit had gotten her through every exam, every deadline, every moment when the gap between what she needed to accomplish and what she'd actually done felt too wide to cross without a map. She settled into the corner booth, opened her sociology notes, but the inside of her left cheek while she read, a habit she'd had so long it had left a small permanent indent, the body recording its own patterns of concentration in scar tissue. The espresso machine hissed. The seagulls cried outside. Someone 2 tables over were laughing at something on their phone. Normal sounds. Friday sounds, except it was Friday only in the sense that today was the last day before fall break, which started Monday, which meant it had the particular ambient lightness of before holiday, everyone carrying their relief slightly early. She crossed out another item on the index card with her purple pen. At 8:40, she packed up and walked to campus. She climbed the stairs to Heiner Hall, counting under her breath 14, 15, 16 before taking her 3rd-row center seat in English composition at 9. The day moved through itself the way ordinary days do, unremarkably, in sequence held together by routine and small obligations. English composition at 9, Professor Walsh mentioning the essay due Monday with the breezy confidence of someone who assumes students have already started. They hadn't. Kaylee wrote a note to herself. Revise WW essay this weekend, priority. Sociology at 11, Professor Aguilar announcing the midterm rescheduled to October 25th, after break. Not before, and Kaylee felt the subtle interior exhale of a week unexpectedly restored. She had been running on 5 hours a night for 2 weeks, pushing through on caffeine and willpower and that particular sophomore year feeling of not having figured out yet how to manage everything at once. An extra week meant an extra week. She touched the cross necklace. 3 taps. Good. Early childhood development at 1 o'clock was her favorite class, had always been her favorite class. The one where she raised her hand because she actually had something to say and not because she was managing a participation grade. Professor Chen asked about Montessori methods and Kaylee answered, watching the professor nod in that specific way that means yes, exactly rather than thank you for trying. She wrote 3 pages of notes and still wanted to keep going. This was what she wanted to do, not just teach, but understand teaching. The whole architecture of how children learn before they are told they are learning. She wanted to build something, a bilingual preschool, low-income families, the families that needed it most and got it least. She had been thinking about this since she was 15. It was not a vague ambition. It had a shape. At 2:30, she covered a short shift at the library children's section, trading hours with a coworker who had a dentist appointment. She helped a 6-year-old locate the Captain Underpants books with the gravity of someone completing an important mission, which was, from the 6-year-old's perspective, exactly what it was. Beth, her supervisor and the closest thing she had to a mentor at the library, found her restacking picture books near the end of the shift. "You seem tired," Beth said, not unkindly. The way someone says it when they actually want to know. Just midterms. Kaylee arranged a row of board books by height, couldn't help it, had to be even. "I'm fine." Beth looked at her for a moment the way adults look at 19-year-olds who say they are fine, with affection and skepticism and the particular helplessness of knowing you cannot make someone rest who has not yet decided to rest. She didn't push. Kaylee would figure it out. She always figured it out. She got back to the dorm at 4 o'clock. Jenna was at her desk. Anatomy textbook open, highlighter in hand. The room smelled like Jenna's vanilla candle and Kaylee's strawberry shampoo, both of them layered into the fabric of the space they'd shared for 15 months, so that the room had its own composite scent now, something that was neither of theirs specifically but both of theirs completely. This was what it was to share a room with someone, You made a smell together, a sound together. A life-sized practice of coexistence that taught you things about yourself you hadn't known you needed to learn. Hey, Jenna said, not looking up. Did you hear about Rachel's party? Kaylee set her backpack down by the door, aligned her shoes against the baseboard, heels touching the wall exactly parallel. Yeah, thinking about going, thinking about it, you. Kaylee considered she didn't like parties, not in a principled way, more in the way that some people don't like crowded trains. Not morally opposed, just constitutionally unsuited, the noise and the press of bodies and the particular social obligation of seeming to have fun loudly enough that everyone can see it. She had gone to 3 parties freshman year and spent all 3 of them in kitchen corners talking to whoever else had ended up in kitchen corners. Which was fine, actually she had learned some interesting things. But it wasn't what parties were supposedly for, and she always left feeling slightly fraudulent. But Rachel from her study group had specifically asked her, "You never come out, just one party, it's the start of break." And Jenna was going, and the sociology midterm was after break, not before, which meant she had breathing room. And she had just spent 62 hours being responsible, and she was tired, and tired people make different decisions than rested people. Maybe for an hour, Kaylee said, I really need to study tomorrow. She pulled out a fresh index card, wrote her weekend plan in the careful, small handwriting she used for planning, not the loose scrawl of notes taken fast, but the deliberate print of a person building a scaffold, sat WW essay revision. Study group review, library materials. She tucked the card in her back pocket, clicked the purple pen twice. Her phone buzzed. Marco. At 5:47 p.m. Can you call me tonight? Need college advice. She typed back immediately, going out for a bit but call you by midnight. Added the red heart emoji she put at the end of every text to her brother. Hit send. The message didn't deliver, a network delay, her flip phone losing the signal in the concrete walled dorm, and it sat in the queue of unsent things. She didn't know that. She tucked the phone into her backpack's front pocket, zipped it. Touched the zipper once to confirm. She would call Marco by midnight. She always did what she said she would. She checked her backpack one final time before they left. Sociology textbook she wouldn't need tonight but couldn't bring herself to leave behind, planner, wallet with her student ID and $23 in cash, the purple pen clipped to the inside pocket. Enough money to get home if she needed to. Not that she'd need to. 6 blocks. Before they walked down the hallway, Kaylee locked the dorm room door and reached back to touch the knob. Twice. A physical confirmation, safe. Then she turned and followed Jenna toward the stairs. They arrived at Rachel's apartment at 10:15 p.m. Rachel Kim lived 3 blocks off campus in a second-floor apartment she shared with 2 roommates, the kind of place that existed in a specific genus of student housing. Bare bulbs. Furniture that had been here before Rachel and would be here after. A kitchen where 4 different people's magnets held 4 different people's schedules to the refrigerator. The party had the sound profile Kaylee had predicted and prepared herself for. Music too loud for the space. A dozen conversations happening simultaneously in the way that made each one impossible to properly hear. The particular warmth of a room with too many people in it. She stayed close to Jenna. Drank half a plastic cup of something she accepted to have something to do with her hands. Talked to a girl from her English class about the essay due Monday, which felt absurd at a party, but was the kind of conversation Kaylee was always somehow finding herself in. She watched the room with the alert, slightly external quality of someone who is at a party rather than in one, observing the social system from a step outside it. Not unhappily, just accurately. She touched the cross necklace, 3 taps. By 11:15 she was done, not in a dramatic way. She just reached the end of her capacity for it, the way a phone reaches the end of its charge, gradual then sudden. She found Jenna in the living room and said she was heading back, she was tired, she'd had enough. Jenna said okay, she'd be another hour, she'd see her back at the room. This was fine, 6 blocks. She walked it every day. She pulled her gray WW sweatshirt sleeves down over her hands, stepped out into the cold October night. The mist had settled into something colder since the afternoon, and the streets had that particular 11 p.m. quiet that isn't silence but is the absence of the specific human noise that fills the hours before, the city still breathing but differently. The street was mostly empty. Her left shoe squeaked once on the wet pavement. She began to hum. She was thinking about Marco and the call she'd make when she got back, and the list on the index card in her back pocket, and the fact that fall break was 4 days away, and the essay that needed one more revision, and the cross necklace she touched one more time, tap, 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 because the night was darker than she'd expected, and the street ahead was longer, and she was, for just a moment, moving from one place to another through a world that felt slightly less safe than it had an hour ago. She couldn't have said why. She walked. 60 miles away in the house on Elm Street in Mount Vernon where Kaylee had grown up, Rosa Martinez was already asleep. She had called Kaylee 3 times that week, normal, she always did, and Kaylee had been a little hard to reach, distracted, midterms, she'd said on their last call. Tomorrow was Saturday. Sunday was their day. Sunday at 6 o'clock, Rosa would sit at the kitchen table with her phone and her notepad and her cup of tea, and Kaylee would call, as she always called, and they would talk for 45 minutes, and Rosa would hear her daughter's voice and know that the world was properly ordered. That call was never going to come. Kaylee didn't know it. Rosa didn't know it. Nobody on that street knew anything at 11:20 p.m. except that it was late October in Bellingham, and a girl was walking home in the mist, and her left shoe was squeaking on the wet pavement in its small and ordinary rhythm, and she was humming something tuneless and soft, and she was wearing a gray sweatshirt with a university name across the chest, and she was 19 years old and had plans for the morning and a list in her pocket and $400 saved toward a car. She was just walking home. On the porch outside Rachel Kim's apartment, Jenna Cooper lit a cigarette. She'd been inside for almost an hour, and the air in there, warm, oversweet with cheap alcohol and a dozen overlapping perfumes, and the particular humidity of too many people in too small a space, had started to press on her the way it did when she'd had enough party and needed a minute of cold and quiet to reset. She stepped out through the sliding glass door at 11:30 p.m. with her red Solo cup and her lighter and the specific intention of 2 minutes of fresh air before going back in. She was not looking for anything. She was just standing there watching the street, and then she saw Kaylee. Jenna Cooper was about to see something. She wouldn't tell anyone for 113 days. 11:32 p.m. Security truck pulling up beside Kaylee. Kaylee was walking alone on James Street, moving in the direction of campus at the particular pace of someone who has made their decision and is executing it, head slightly down, hands in her sweatshirt pocket. Jenna recognized the posture. That was Kaylee's "I'm done with this, I'm going home" walk. She'd seen it before at a study group that ran long, at a library shift that drained her. The walk of someone who has given what they have to give and is now in the process of recovery, already halfway home in their head before their body has caught up. Jenna was about to call out to her, "Hey, wait, I'll come with you," when the security truck pulled up. Campus security. White truck with the blue Whatcom Community College insignia on the door. She'd seen it 100 times, circling the campus in its slow, authorized way, the truck that meant someone was watching, someone was making sure. The window came down and Jenna could see the driver speaking to Kaylee, though she couldn't make out words at this distance. She watched Kaylee stop walking, turn toward the truck, watched them talk 30 seconds, maybe 45. Then the passenger door opened and Kaylee got in. Jenna took a drag of her cigarette. Good, she thought, she got a ride, safer than walking. She turned around and went back inside the party. She would think about this moment for the rest of her life, the exact angle of light on the truck, the color of Kaylee's sweatshirt, the small sound of the passenger door closing. She would think about it at her nursing school graduation and at her wedding and in the delivery room when her daughter was born, screaming and alive, and she would think, "I could have called out. I could have run down the stairs. I could have said her name one time and everything would have been different." She would think this for 113 days. She would think it still. What Kaylee thought. In the moment the white security truck pulled up beside her was relief. She was 3 blocks from campus. It was cold and dark and the street was empty, and she had been walking with the low-grade alertness of a young woman alone at night, which is not fear exactly but is the body keeping a background account of its own vulnerability. A running calculation that most women learn so young it becomes invisible. She had her keys in her hand, habit. Another form of the same calculation. She was fine. She was almost certainly fine. But the mist was thicker than it had been at 11, and the foghorn was sounding out on the bay, and the night had that particular quality of depth that makes you aware of your own smallness in it. The truck was familiar. The uniform was familiar. This was Derek Vaughn. She knew him by sight the way you know the faces of institutional authority, not personally, not by name specifically, but as a category: campus security, night shift, the truck that circles. He represented the structure of safety that the campus had spent years building and advertising. The Safe Ride program, the blue emergency call boxes every 100 yards, the 4-person security team that had been expanded after Virginia Tech because parents needed to believe their children were being watched over. When she saw the truck and the window came down, her body registered it as the correct response to the situation she was in. Someone whose job it is to keep you safe has noticed you're alone. "Hey," Derek Vaughn said, "need a ride? It's late." She hesitated. 6 blocks. She had walked 6 blocks 100 times. She was almost certainly fine. "Come on," he said. "I'm campus security. It's literally my job to keep you safe. Hop in." She touched the cross necklace. Tap, tap, tap. She got in. Child safety locks. Designed to protect children. Used to trap a college student. The first 90 seconds of the drive were fine. Derek drove in the direction of campus, and Kaylee looked out the window at streets she knew and felt the warmth of the truck cab and the specific relief of being in motion toward home, the particular gratitude of a night that had been longer than expected and was now almost over. She would be back in room 247 in 4 minutes. And she would call Marco. She would be asleep by midnight. Then the truck turned right instead of left. A small thing, a wrong turn. She registered it the way you register a step on a staircase that isn't there, the body expecting one reality, encountering another. "This isn't the way to campus," she said. "Shortcut," Derek said. His voice was level. "There's a blocked road ahead." She looked out the window. The streets were unfamiliar, not far from campus. Not far from anywhere she knew, but wrong. Moving away from the dormitories, away from the lit pathways and the blue emergency call boxes, toward the industrial edge of the campus property where the Cascade Hall construction site sat in its incomplete state, framed by chain-link fencing and heavy equipment, and a dark that was different from the dark of residential streets because nothing there was built for people to inhabit yet. "Can you just take me to my dorm?" She said. "Relax." He hadn't looked at her. "I know what I'm doing." She reached for the door handle. She pulled. The door didn't open. She pulled again, harder, both hands now, the specific, horrified understanding moving from her hands up her arms into her chest before her brain had fully formed the thought, "The door won't open, the door won't open. Why won't the door open?" And then she understood. Child safety locks. The kind that disengages the interior release mechanism, that make it impossible to open the door from inside, that exist in the rear doors of vehicles so that children can't let themselves out while the car is moving. They were in the front seat. The front seat of a car does not typically have child safety locks. He had modified this. He had prepared for this. "Let me out," she said. "Open the door." "We're almost there," Derek said. His voice hadn't changed. She looked at the window, moving too fast to jump. She screamed once, sharp and involuntary, and there was no one outside the window to hear it. No one on this road at 11:36 p.m., nothing but the construction fencing rushing past and the darkness beyond it and the sound of her own voice bouncing off the interior of the cab and dissolving. She touched the cross necklace. She gripped it. The chain pressed into her palm hard enough to leave an impression. 11:45 p.m. Kaylee Martinez died in Derek Vaughn's truck. The medical examiner's report, completed in 2024 from the remains recovered at the Cascade Hall site, would conclude asphyxiation due to manual strangulation, fractured hyoid bone, defensive wounds on both hands and forearms, patterned bruising consistent with an attempt to push away an attacker, to scratch, to fight. The forensic record was clinical and precise and said, without sentiment, what sentiment would take years to process. She fought. She did not go quietly. She fought for her life in that truck cab in the dark at the edge of a construction site in Bellingham, Washington at 11:40-something at night, fighting against a man who outweighed her by 80 pounds and had the advantage of preparation and surprise and a door she couldn't open. She fought. She lost. Time of death. Approximately 11:45 to 11:50 p.m. 11:47 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. Derek worked quickly. He'd thought about this. The construction site for Cascade Hall occupied the northeast corner of the Whatcom Community College property, approximately 200 yards from the nearest occupied building. The foundation excavation had been completed the previous week, a rectangular pit, 18 inches to 3 feet deep in most sections, framed by rebar and wooden forms awaiting the concrete pour scheduled for Monday morning. The site was dark, no cameras, no one on duty. The chain-link gate was padlocked, but Derek had a key. Campus security had access to all restricted areas of the property, which was in its way the most complete summary of how this had been possible. He used a shovel from the construction crew's storage area. He chose the northeast corner of the excavation, where the depth was closest to 18 inches and the loose earth from the recent digging was indistinguishable from the surrounding disturbed soil. He worked for just over an hour. He left the purple backpack with her. This detail would matter enormously 14 years later. It mattered now only in the sense that it told the story of what Derek Vaughn understood about this crime and what he didn't. He understood enough to leave no identifying evidence in the truck, to vacuum the cab afterward at a 24-hour car wash on Samish Way at 1:47 a.m. Security camera footage recovered in 2024 would show this. To return to campus and complete his patrol as though nothing had altered the fundamental facts of the night. He understood that a body needed to not be found. He did not understand or did not think about, which amounts to the same thing, that a purple backpack with the initials KRM embroidered on the front pocket buried with its owner would survive 14 years of soil and moisture and concrete compression and would be the thing eventually that broke through the gray. He covered the grave, scattered loose rebar over the disturbed earth to match the surrounding area, shone his flashlight over the surface, indistinguishable from the rest of the excavation. The rain that had been forecast was starting softly, then more insistently, washing the loose earth smooth, erasing the edges of any disturbance he might have missed. He returned the shovel to storage. He drove out of the construction site at 1:30 a.m. At 1:47 a.m., he vacuumed the truck interior at the Samish Way car wash. At 3:15 a.m., he sat at the campus security desk and wrote in the handwritten log, checked all buildings. All secure. He wrote, quiet night. DV, they had no idea there was a body 18 inches below. No one checked. Why would they? The construction crew for Cascade Hall arrived Monday morning, October 18th at 6 o'clock. Foreman Mike Chen, no relation to the detective, no relation to anyone in this story except as an instrument of its most terrible irony, walked the foundation excavation as he always walked it before a pour. Visual inspection. Checking rebar placement, checking the wooden forms along the edges, looking for anything that might interfere with a clean concrete flow. He had done this hundreds of times. He was looking for rebar out of alignment for forms that had shifted, for water pooling in the low areas. He was not looking for disturbed earth because why would he be? The excavation had been dug 2 weeks ago. The earth had been sitting since then. It was supposed to look like disturbed earth. That's what an excavation looks like. He walked directly over the northeast corner. He saw nothing unusual. Looks good, he told his crew. Let's get this floor poured. The concrete trucks arrived at 7 o'clock, 3 of them loaded with the precise mixture Cascade Hall's structural plans required: Portland cement, aggregate, water, the ingredients of permanence. The chutes extended. The pour began in the northwest corner and worked systematically across the foundation floor in the sequence the crew had been doing pours for 20 years. Slow, steady, irreversible. Worker #3 stood in the northeast corner at 7:47 a.m., guiding the concrete flow with a rake, ensuring even coverage, watching the gray liquid fill the last section of the foundation floor. He was thinking about lunch. He was thinking about whether the drizzle starting up again would slow the curing. He raked the concrete smooth and level and called out to the foreman, looking good, nice and level, and the foreman confirmed the coverage and moved to the next task. The worker was standing directly above Kaylee Martinez. She had been there for 64 hours. By 8:30 a.m., the pour was complete. The entire foundation floor, approximately 180 cubic yards of concrete, was in place, setting into its irreversible state. Curing time 28 days for full structural strength. The concrete that covered the northeast corner, where Kaylee lay 18 inches below the surface, would eventually achieve a compressive strength of 4,000 psi. It was, in the most literal sense, meant to last forever. And for 14 years it did. Sunday, October 17th. Rosa Martinez's kitchen. The yellow-green afternoon light she'd lived with for 20 years, the particular quality of light in that house on Elm Street in Mount Vernon that she knew better than any light anywhere. The phone on the kitchen table. Her notepad beside it, the same notepad she always kept by the phone. The one with the grocery lists and the dentist appointment reminders, and the corner she'd folded over that had Kaylee's campus address written on it in the first week of freshman year, when everything was new and she'd needed to write it down to believe it was real. 6 o'clock. The phone did not ring. Rosa sat with the phone on the table and waited. She was good at waiting. She had always been good at waiting. That was what you became when you immigrated to a country where you didn't know the language and had to learn everything from scratch, where waiting in an office or a line or an incomprehensible bureaucratic process meant the difference between paperwork moving forward or not. You learned to be still. You learned to let the time pass without fighting it. She had learned this, and then she had spent 20 years unlearning it where Kaylee was concerned. Because Kaylee called every Sunday at 6 o'clock and had called every Sunday at 6 o'clock for 2.5 years, and the phone simply rang, always Kaylee's voice before Rosa even said hello. "Mama, hi, how's everything?" 6:05, she told herself, running late, out somewhere, phone on silent. Young people do this. Normal, fine. 6:15, she called Kaylee's number, voicemail, immediate, not after 4 rings, but immediate. Which meant the phone was either off or out of range, which was unusual. Kaylee's phone was always on. She left a message. "Mija, it's Mama, call me when you can, I'm not worried, just checking in." She was worried. 6:30, she called again, voicemail again. She left a shorter message this time, just her name, just call me. When the second voicemail went unanswered, she opened a new text message. Her hands were shaking slightly, but she typed the way she always typed to her children, the visual volume turned all the way up. "Mija, where are you? Please call Mama." She hit send, received no response. Opened the message again and looked at it, all those capital letters, her particular grammar of urgency, the digital equivalent of a mother's voice raised not in anger but in the specific frequency of fear. She put the phone back on the table, kept her eyes on it. In her backpack, buried 18 inches under the Cascade Hall foundation, where the concrete was already beginning its slow cure, Kaylee's LG Rumor flip phone received both calls. The battery was at 67%. She had charged it that morning before getting dressed, the way she always did, the morning routine she had had since freshman year. The phone worked perfectly. It could receive calls. It stored them in its queue with the automated efficiency of a system that does not know what has happened, that has no category for the person this phone belongs to is dead, and therefore proceeds as normal, receiving and logging and waiting. The signal from the Bellingham cell tower reached it through soil and disrupted concrete forms and the October rain that was now falling steadily on the construction site. The calls came in. The phone registered them. 23 voicemails from Rosa Martinez alone in the first week. Rosa's voice in the dark underground played to no one. "Mija, call me, I'm a little worried now." "Kaylee, please, it's Sunday, you always call Sunday." "My Amber, please just let me know you're safe." 7 o'clock, Rosa called campus security. 7:30, campus security checked room 247. Kaylee not there. Jenna, who was there and knew exactly why Kaylee wasn't there and had been sitting in the room for 6 hours, increasingly aware of what she had seen and increasingly unable to say it, told the security officer the same thing she would tell the police the following morning. She'd last seen Kaylee leaving the party around 11:20 p.m. walking toward campus. She'd assumed Kaylee got back fine. She didn't mention the security truck. She didn't mention Derek Vaughn, she told herself, in the specific grammar of terrified 19-year-olds, that maybe she'd misremembered. Maybe it was just someone's car. Maybe Kaylee had gotten home a different way and was somewhere on campus she didn't know about. Maybe 8 o'clock, Daniel Martinez arrived home. He'd gotten Rosa's call on the road driving back from a job site and had come directly. He stood in the kitchen doorway and cleared his throat, once, twice, 3 times. The involuntary ritual he performed before anything that required him to be steadier than he felt. He didn't say, "I'm sure she's fine." He took Rosa's hand and they sat at the kitchen table together. 9 o'clock, they called the Bellingham police. A missing persons report was filed. Kaylee Rose Martinez, 19, last seen October 15, 2010, approximately 11:20 p.m., leaving a party at 3417 James Street. Physical description: 5'6", long dark brown hair in ponytail, brown eyes, gray sweatshirt, dark jeans, white Converse sneakers. The officer who took the report said the things officers say most missing persons cases resolve within 24 hours, college students, weekend, probably with friends, and Rosa listened and said nothing and wrote nothing on her notepad because there was nothing to write that she didn't already know, which was that her daughter called every Sunday at 6 o'clock without exception, had called every Sunday for 2.5 years, and the phone was going to voicemail and something was wrong in a way that did not have a simple explanation and would not resolve in 24 hours. She knew. She could not have said exactly how she knew, only that she did. Detective Sarah Chen of the Bellingham Police Department was assigned the Kaylee Martinez case Monday morning, October 18th. At 9 o'clock, the same hour the concrete was completing its pour 40 minutes east of her office, though she didn't know that, had no reason to know it, had no reason at that point to look at the Cascade Hall construction site at all. She was assigned a missing college student. She had the address of the last known location, a list of names to interview, and 14 years of experience telling her that most of these cases resolved quietly. The student was with someone they hadn't told their family about, or they'd needed to get away from something and had done so without communicating it, or the outcomes she didn't speak aloud to families in the first 48 hours. They hadn't needed to get away from anything, someone had helped them go. She started with Jenna. The interview was October 19th. Chen had been doing this long enough to know the tells, the eyes that slide left when the story is incomplete, the hands that find something to do when the truth is being edited. She sat across from Jenna Cooper in the campus security office and she watched and she asked the question, the one she always asked, the one she had asked in 100 of these rooms. Think carefully. Did anyone offer Kaylee a ride? Did any cars stop? Jenna's hand went to her hair. She began twirling it. A gesture Chen noted without expression. I went back inside pretty quick, Jenna said. Her eyes were down. But no, I don't think so. Chen waited, that small beat of silence after an answer that holds space for the speaker to correct themselves, to add something, to say actually wait, there was. Jenna said nothing. You're sure? Chen said. I'm sure. Chen wrote it in her notebook. Last saw subject at party 11:20 p.m. No vehicles noted by witness. She moved to the next name on her list. In the corner of the campus security lot, Derek Vaughn's white truck sat in its usual space. Derek was not working that day. He'd taken a personal day, the first he'd taken in 3 years. The truck had been washed. The interior had been vacuumed. The carpet had been treated. By the end of the week, 500 people would attend a candlelight vigil on the Whatcom CC Commons. Flyers with Kaylee's face would appear in every storefront on Holly Street, on Railroad Avenue, on the bulletin boards of every coffee shop and library and laundromat in Bellingham. The reward fund would reach $47,000 in 3 weeks. Rosa Martinez would give 4 press conferences, standing in front of a photograph of her daughter. The one from Pike Place Market, summer 2010, Kaylee laughing with her whole face. The left dimple visible even in a small print, and she would say each time with the steadiness of someone who has decided that steadiness is the only option available, "My daughter did not run away. Someone knows where she is. Please help us find her." She was right. Someone did know. She went back inside the party. On November 4th, 3 weeks after Kaylee disappeared, Derek Vaughn submitted his resignation to the Whatcom Community College security director. Family situation, need for a fresh start. He was a quiet worker, had been unremarkable for 3 years, and the director accepted the resignation without much question. These things happened. People moved on. Detective Chen noted the timing. Security guard resigned 3 weeks after incident and made a notation in the file, follow up. She called the security office, got a forwarding address that turned out to be temporary. Received assurance from the director that Derek had seemed sad about the missing student like everyone. She had no probable cause. She had a vague unease and a notation in a file. She moved to the next lead. On November 12th, Derek Vaughn loaded a U-Haul, drove south to pick up I-5, turned north on the highway that eventually fed into the Alaska highway system, and did not stop until Anchorage. He was 3,000 miles away when Cascade Hall's foundation concrete reached its full structural strength. He was 3,000 miles away when the building rose, floor by floor, above the place where he had dug a hole and put a 19-year-old girl into it and covered her over and written "Quiet Night" in a security log. He was 3,000 miles away, and no one was looking for him. The first year is the worst and also the easiest, in the specific way that the most acute form of anything is easier than its chronic version, because at least you know what you're feeling. At least the shape of it is recognizable. Grief in its first year has the quality of an emergency. It demands everything, justifies everything, explains the dark circles and the weight loss and the inability to be in a grocery store without leaving your cart in the middle of an aisle and walking out because you turned a corner and saw the brand of vanilla latte syrup Kaylee used to buy, and the world became briefly uninhabitable. The first year, people understand. People bring food. People call. People say, "How are you holding up?" and mean it. Or at least mean it enough that the gap between the question and their capacity to hold the answer doesn't show too clearly. Rosa filed 247 missing person tip inquiries in the first year. She knows the exact number because she kept a ledger. Of course she kept a ledger. She was her daughter's mother. Organization was a language they shared. A lined notebook in which she recorded every call, every contact, every response or non-response from the Bellingham Police Department, from the private investigator they hired in April 2011, at a cost of $15,000 they could not afford, from the tip line that had generated $47,000 in reward contributions from the Bellingham community, and exactly 0 confirmed sightings of Kaylee Rose Martinez. She called Kaylee's phone every day for 6 months. She knew it was dead, she knew it. But she called anyway, the way you press on a bruise to confirm it still hurts, not because you want it to hurt, but because the alternative, the not pressing, the leaving it alone, feels too much like forgetting. Mija, call me. She left voicemails in Spanish when the English ran out. She left voicemails that were just her crying. She left voicemails that said, "I'm making your father's puzzle tonight, the kind you always wanted seconds of. I made extra, call me." 14 months after Kaylee disappeared, the cell carrier disconnected the number. Rosa kept calling for 2 weeks before she accepted it. Then she sat at the kitchen table and put the phone down and didn't pick it up for 3 days. Daniel's landscaping business began losing clients in the second year. Not dramatically, one here, one there, a contract not renewed. A referral that didn't materialize, but enough that the pattern was visible by 2012 if you were looking. A man who showed up to a job and could not keep his attention on it, who stood in someone's back garden with a rake in his hands and spent 20 minutes looking at nothing. His crew covered for him because they'd been with him for years and they understood, in the way that people who work with their hands understand things. Not in words, but in the way you adjust your pace to accommodate someone who is carrying something heavy. They took on more. They didn't say anything. It helped and it didn't help. He built a bench that first October. He had always built things, small furniture, garden structures, the kind of woodworking that was half hobby and half the need that practical people have to do something with their hands when everything else is out of their control. He built the bench in the garage working nights, and he did not know exactly what it was for until it was done. Solid oak, sealed against weather, with Kaylee's name carved into the backrest in the careful block letters of a father who had spent many hours getting the spacing right. He put it in the backyard, in the corner where Kaylee used to sit with her phone pressed to her ear on Sunday evenings before her calls moved from home to campus. He sat on it sometimes. He cleared his throat once, twice, 3 times, and then just sat. Marco turned 17 in November 2010, 18 in November 2011, graduated in June 2012 from Sehome High School in a ceremony where every seat was taken except one, Rosa and Daniel and their respective extended families filling 2 rows, and a seat left empty in the family section with a photograph of Kaylee propped on the chair, her Pike Place Market smile the left dimple. Marco walked across the stage and received his diploma and looked at that photograph and did not cry, which was the hardest thing he'd ever done. He had made a private decision in the year after Kaylee disappeared. He would not become someone she would have worried about. He would be okay. He would do the things she had told him to do, the motivational quotes she had been texting him every morning. He kept them all, had screenshotted everyone, had a folder on his phone he still opened sometimes, and he would be okay for her benefit if not his own. He was not okay, but he kept trying. He went to work for Daniel's landscaping business after graduation because WW was no longer something he could think about. Too much of Kaylee lived there, in the application he'd found in her room when they cleaned out her dorm, the one she never got to submit, the one with the essay about her goals and her plans for a bilingual preschool and the future that was supposed to happen. He could not make himself apply to the same school she had been reaching toward. So he worked with his hands like his father, and he kept the motivational quotes folder on his phone, and he texted her number sometimes even though it was disconnected. Still taking your advice, Kay, miss you every day. The texts went nowhere. He sent them anyway. October 17, 2010, Jenna lied to police. Last saw her at 11:20 p.m. at the party. She left alone. She omitted one thing, the security truck. She omitted one thing that was, as it turned out, the entire thing. Why? The psychology of it is not complicated, but it is not simple either. In the first week, fear. If she admitted seeing Kaylee get into the truck, the police would ask why she hadn't thought it was strange. Why she hadn't followed her. Why she'd gone back inside and stayed at the party for another 2 hours. The calculation a terrified 19-year-old makes, speaking up might make me look complicit, silence keeps me safe. In week 1, the lie was fresh, changeable. She could still have corrected it. She didn't. Month 1 harder. She'd been questioned twice. She'd given the same statement twice. Changing her story now would mean explaining why she'd lied, which would mean the explanation would become the story, and the story would be Jenna Cooper withheld information that might have solved this. Month 3, she transferred from Whatcom CC to UW Seattle, ostensibly because she could not bear to be on that campus, which was true, but also because leaving the campus meant leaving the proximity of what she knew. The construction site she had to walk past every morning, the security office she had to pass every afternoon, the space in the parking lot where Derek Vaughn's truck had sat until it didn't anymore, until he was gone, until his absence began to clarify what his presence had meant. And she was already in Seattle by then and couldn't tell anyone without first explaining why she hadn't told anyone already. Year 1, she had built the lie into the foundation of her new life the way Derek had built his secret into the foundation of Cascade Hall. Not intentionally, but structurally. It was load-bearing now. Year 5, Jenna finished her nursing degree, moved to a studio apartment in Capitol Hill, changed her last name from Cooper to Williams on her professional license. Fresh start, she told herself. She started therapy. She never told the therapist the real reason. She went to the Find Kaylee Martinez Facebook page every October 14th, the night before the anniversary, and scrolled through the posts from Rosa and Daniel and Marco and the Bellingham community members who still remembered. She donated $500 anonymously to the reward fund every year. She sat in her apartment in the dark, and she thought about what Jenna Cooper from room 247 would have done if she'd known then what she knew now. That the security truck was not a safe ride. That going back inside was not a reasonable decision. That 30 seconds on a party porch was going to cost a family 14 years of their lives. Year 10, she got engaged. Broke it off 8 months later. Year 12, got a dog. Year 13, got married Mike Williams, a good man who loved her in the uncomplicated way that uncomplicated people love, and she loved him back as much as she could through the thing she was carrying, which was considerable. She didn't tell him. She had organized herself around not telling him the same way she had organized herself around not telling anyone. By not thinking about it in adjacent spaces, by keeping the October anniversary a private grief, by calling in sick every October 15th regardless of where she was working because she could not function on that day and had never been able to. Year 14, their daughter was born. Emma. Emma was 7 weeks old the first time Jenna understood, fully and physically and without the ability to argue herself out of it, why she had to tell. She was sitting up at 3 in the morning doing what new parents do, feeding, half-conscious, the television on mute for company, and Emma was in her arms and she was looking at her daughter's face, at the specific smallness of her, at the complete and devastating dependency of a new life, and she thought, what if someone knew where she was and didn't tell me? She put the thought away. It came back every time she held Emma, it came back. What if someone knew? 13 years passed in Bellingham the way years pass in small cities, school years cycling through the campus, students arriving and departing and never knowing they'd lived 40 feet above an unsolved homicide. Cascade Hall filled every fall with freshmen who learned the building as a series of navigational facts. Room 112 has bad heating, the second-floor bathroom smells. The northeast corner of the ground floor is always a few degrees colder than the rest of the building. Nobody knew why the northeast corner ran cold. Nobody thought to ask. The building had been standing since 2011 and would presumably stand indefinitely, and the girl who had been entombed in its foundation was still listed in the Bellingham Police database as a missing person case status. Cold but open, last lead 2013. Every October 15th, Rosa Martinez drove to James Street and parked outside the apartment building that had been Rachel Kim's. Rachel had moved away years ago, but the building was still there, and she sat in her car and watched the street. From approximately 11 o'clock at night until after midnight, she did not fully know what she was waiting for. She was not waiting for anything. She was being present at the place where her daughter had last been because presence felt like something. Felt like refusal, felt like the opposite of the forgetting that the rest of the world had been slowly, gently, inevitably doing. Daniel drove Kaylee's walking route at 11:30 p.m. every October 15th. Left the construction site, which was now Cascade Hall, fully built, fully occupied, took the route Kaylee would have taken, right on a high street, right on a College Avenue, through the campus gate towards Seaview Residence Hall. 6 blocks. 7 minutes. He drove it slowly, the way you drive a route you are trying to memorize or trying to understand. He never found the place where the understanding clicked into place. He drove home, cleared his throat, made tea, couldn't sleep. Marco posted on Facebook, October 15, 2015, 5 years, still here, case still asking, October 15, 2018, 8 years, the questions don't change, just get older. October 15, 2022, 12 years. I still open the quotes folder, still taking your advice. Sarah Chen, high school best friend, now a grief therapist in Seattle. The career trajectory of someone who has needed to understand something and chosen to understand it professionally, lit a candle every October 15th in her apartment and sat with it until it burned out. She had 3 clients in her practice who were, she had realized in various ways, processing grief that resembled her own. She did not call this a coincidence. Detective Sarah Chen, the other Chen, the investigator who had retired from the Bellingham PD in 2019 after 27 years, kept the Kaylee Martinez case file in a box in her home office. She had taken it with her when she retired. She was not supposed to. She did it anyway. She told herself it was because she planned to write something about it eventually. A book about unsolved cases, the kind of thing retired detectives sometimes wrote. She did not write anything. She opened the box every October 15th, took out the file, read through it the way she had read through it 100 times, looking for the detail she had missed, the thread she had followed to a dead end that might have, if she'd followed it differently, gone somewhere else. She always turned to the page where she'd noted Derek Vaughn's resignation. 3 weeks after the disappearance. She'd noted it as potentially significant. She'd followed up, gotten a dead end, moved on. She kept turning back to that page. In September 2023, the Whatcom Community College Board of Trustees approved a capital facilities project, a ground floor renovation of Cascade Hall, new HVAC system, updated electrical, modernized common areas. The northeast corner of the ground floor, the section that had always run a few degrees cold, for reasons nobody had ever investigated, was scheduled for full remediation. Concrete removal, subfloor replacement, new vapor barrier. The project was awarded to a local contractor in November. Work was scheduled to begin in January 2024. Nobody knew what the concrete was keeping. Nobody knew what January was going to find. In Anchorage, Alaska, Derek Vaughn was working security at the Dimmons Center shopping mall, checking the stores at closing time, logging his rounds in the same handwritten format he had used for 20 years, building number, time, status. He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Midtown. He had been married once briefly, divorced 2018. He had a cat. He played online video games on his days off. He slept fine at night. He was 3,000 miles from Bellingham, and 14 years had gone by and the concrete was solid. And nobody was looking. He had almost started to believe, in the way that people believe in things they need to be true, that the 14 years were permanent, that distance and time were the same as safety, that quiet night written in a logbook at 3:15 a.m. was a thing that could be true if enough years passed over it, that a girl buried under a building was a secret the building would keep. January was coming. The construction crew for the Cascade Hall renovation arrived on Monday, January 14th, 2024, at 7 in the morning. It was the kind of Bellingham January that made you understand why the Pacific Northwest had invented coffee culture. 34 degrees and the particular dampness that gets through whatever you're wearing. The sky sealed over with cloud cover so flat and uniform it looked less like weather and more like a ceiling. The crew set up their equipment on the ground floor of Cascade Hall. Students had been relocated to temporary housing for the duration of the renovation. The building hollow and echoing without them, and began the work that had been scheduled for 6 weeks. Pull the old concrete, assess the subfloor, replace the vapor barrier, pour new. They started in the northwest corner and worked systematically east, the way the original crew had worked systematically west 14 years before, and which meant the northeast corner was last. The crew foreman was a man named Gary Walsh, 41 years old, who had been doing this work since his early 20s and had developed the particular expertise of someone who has broken up a great deal of concrete. He knew by the sound and the feel of the equipment when he was encountering something expected and when he wasn't. The northeast corner had been running cold for years, which he'd noted in his pre-project inspection and attributed to a vapor barrier failure, moisture under the slab, possible settling, standard. The jackhammer operator broke through the slab in 3 passes. The concrete fractured along predictable lines, the gray panels tilting and separating as the equipment pulled them up. Walsh was watching the debris pile when the color appeared. Purple, not concrete gray, not soil brown. Purple. A specific, vivid, deliberate purple, the color of something that had been made by human hands with the intention of being that color, not the color of anything that belonged in the subfloor of a 14-year-old dormitory building. Walsh said, "Stop." The operator stopped. Walsh walked to the edge of the broken slab and looked down into the excavated area and saw, protruding from the soil beneath where the concrete had been, the corner of what appeared to be a backpack. Purple nylon, waterlogged and compressed by 14 years of weight but intact. And beside it, barely visible where the concrete had fractured and the soil had shifted, something else, a thin chain, silver. Roser recognized it immediately. The cross she gave Kaylee at confirmation, "Wear this, it will protect you." Walsh called 911 at 8:17 a.m. The responding officers secured the scene, called for the forensic unit, and by 10 o'clock the ground floor of Cascade Hall had been converted into an active crime scene. Yellow tape, evidence technicians in white suits, the specific stillness of a space that has been reclassified. The concrete removal stopped. The contractor's equipment sat idle. The building that had been a dormitory that had housed 150 students per year for 9 years, that had been a place of laundry and late nights and ordinary college life, was now something else. It was a burial site. The forensic excavation took 3 days. The remains were fragile, 14 years of soil pressure and moisture and the particular chemistry of concrete curing above them, but the concrete had also in its way protected them. The sealed environment had slowed decomposition significantly. The clothing was identifiable: gray sweatshirt, dark denim, white canvas sneakers. The backpack was intact, purple JanSport. KRM embroidered on the front pocket in the specific thread pattern of a grandmother's handiwork. Inside, a sociology textbook, its pages fused and illegible. A purple planner. A wallet with a student ID. A flip phone and LG rumor, its casing cracked but the internal components preserved enough that a forensic technician would later recover its data, including 23 saved voicemails, the oldest dated October 16, 2010, the most recent from a number disconnected in January 2012. And around the neck of the remains, the silver cross. Simple design, 18-inch chain, the clasp closed, tarnished after 14 years underground but present. Unbroken. The chain that Rosa Martinez had fastened around her daughter's throat at confirmation, pressing her hands against Kaylee's face and saying, "You are protected, you are loved, you carry this with you always." She had carried it. It had stayed. The forensic anthropologist's preliminary report was filed January 17th. The report noted the remains were consistent with a female individual, approximately 18 to 25 years of age, with evidence of perimortem trauma to the hyoid bone, consistent with strangulation. Defensive wound patterns on the forearm bones, consistent with a physical struggle. Bellingham police cross-referenced active missing persons cases against the physical evidence. The student ID in the wallet, though water-damaged, was partially legible. Whatcom Community College. The planner, though its pages had fused, bore a name in the same embroidered monogram as the backpack. KRM. Kaylee Rose Martinez, missing since October 15, 2010, last seen 6 blocks from where she was now found. The dental records request was submitted January 17th. The comparison was completed February 9th, 2024. The forensic odontologist's report was 3 paragraphs long and required no interpretation. The dental records on file for Kaylee Rose Martinez, provided by the Martinez family dentist in Mount Vernon, matched the remains recovered from the Cascade Hall subfloor with complete certainty. There was no longer a missing persons case. There was a homicide. Detective Sarah Chen, retired Detective Chen, the one with the box in her home office and the file she'd read 100 times and the page she kept returning to, received a call on the morning of February 9th from her former partner, still on the force, who had been assigned to the case when the remains were found and who had found in the case files Chen's name on the original investigation. "It's her," her former partner said. Chen sat in her home office. The box was open on the desk in front of her. The way it was open every October 15th, the way it had been open more frequently in recent months, some combination of retirement restlessness and the particular unfinishedness of this case that had never fully released her. "Where?" she said. "Under Cascade Hall." Chen was quiet for a long moment. "She was there the whole time," she said. It was not a question. It was a statement that contained 14 years of following leads that went nowhere. 14 years of anniversary phone calls with Rosa Martinez, 14 years of turning back to that one page in the file with Derek Vaughn's name on it and the notation she'd made. "Follow up, probably unrelated, probably unrelated." "I want back on it," Chen said. "Consulting capacity, whatever you can give me." Her former partner said she'd make the call. Under Cascade Hall, she'd been there the whole time. Rosa Martinez received the call on February 9th, 2024 at 2:17 in the afternoon. She was in the kitchen where she was always, it seemed, when the significant calls came, the kitchen with its yellow-green light and the notepad by the phone and the family photographs on the refrigerator that included, still, a photograph of Kaylee at the Pike Place Market, summer 2010, the left dimple visible, the future invisible. The detective on the phone, Chen's former partner. Chen herself on the line as well told her what they had found and what they had confirmed. Rosa listened. She did not say much. She asked the same question she had been asking for 14 years. Where was she? And when they told her under Cascade Hall, the dormitory on the northeast corner of the campus, the building that had gone up in 2011, the building that students had been living in for 9 years, Rosa was quiet for a long time. She had driven past that building every October 15th, every memorial walk. She had driven past it dozens of times in 14 years, taking the long way around campus the way she sometimes did when she needed to be near the last place Kaylee had been, and she had driven past Cascade Hall without knowing that the building she was looking at was the answer to the question she had spent 14 years asking. Kaylee had never left. She had been 6 blocks from her dorm room, 6 blocks from Seaview Residence Hall, and from room 247, from the bed with the hospital corners that Jenna had made up the morning after the party when she woke and found it empty, before she understood the emptiness was permanent. She had been under a building where other people's daughters were sleeping and studying and complaining about the heating, and Rosa had been 60 miles away calling a disconnected phone number. Daniel, when Rosa called him, stood in the doorway of the garage for a long moment. He cleared his throat, once, twice, 3 times. Then he sat down on the bench he had built in October 2010, the one with Kaylee's name carved into the backrest, and he put his hands over his face and did not move for a very long time. Marco, 29 years old, working a landscaping job in Mount Vernon when his phone rang, sat down in the middle of someone's back lawn and looked at the sky. He stayed there for 20 minutes. Then he opened his phone and went to the motivational quotes folder, the screenshots of Kaylee's morning texts. 847 of them, the last one dated October 14, 2010. Monday is just a minute away from Sunday. Make it count. And he read through them slowly all the way to the beginning, to the first one she'd ever sent him, and then he closed the folder and called his father. Detective Chen came back to the case in an official consulting capacity on February 15th. She sat in her former office with the case files spread across a conference table, and approached them the way you approach something you have been thinking about for a very long time, not as a puzzle that might have an answer, but as a structure you already understand and outline that simply needs its specific components confirmed. She turned to the page with Derek Vaughn's name. Resigned November 4, 2010, 3 weeks after disappearance. No current address, moved to Alaska for family reasons. Alaska. She requested a cross-reference from the Alaska Department of Motor Vehicles. Derek Allen Vaughn, date of birth March 7, 1976, last known address Bellingham, Washington. The results came back in 72 hours. Derek Allen Vaughn. Current address 4417 Bonanza Drive, Anchorage, Alaska. Current employer Dimmond Center Security Services. Valid Alaska driver's license, renewed 2022. Chen looked at the address for a long time. He had never changed his name. He had never moved again after Anchorage. He had been in the same apartment, working the same job, living what must have been from the outside a perfectly ordinary life. Small apartment, mall security, online gaming, a cat. A man who had calculated that he had gotten away with it and had then relaxed into the calculation, settled into it, built a life around the assumption of permanent safety. He had been wrong. Chen pulled Derek Vaughn's employment file from the Whatcom CC records. Night shift supervisor, 20,072,010. Last scheduled shift before resignation, October 15, 2010. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The night Kaylee disappeared. He had been on duty. He had been patrolling in his campus security truck. His last known position before going off duty the following morning was within 4 blocks of the party on James Street. Chen reached for her phone. She had a call to make. Not to Anchorage, not yet. She had a call to make to a woman in Seattle named Jenna Williams, née Cooper. If you saw something but telling might get you in trouble, would you speak up? What if days passed, weeks, years? At what point does staying silent become unforgivable? Jenna Cooper had been asking herself this question for 113 days. March 22, 2024, Detective Chen called Jenna one last time. Chen had called Jenna 3 times between late February and late March. The first call in late February had been introductory. I'm the original detective on the Kaylee Martinez case. I'd like to speak with you, and Jenna had said yes, of course. She'd been following the news. It was devastating. She would help however she could. The second call in March had been more specific. I'm reviewing witness statements from 2010. Did you see anything that night that you didn't include in your statement? Jenna's voice on the phone had been carefully controlled, a nurse's voice, the voice of someone trained to present steadiness regardless of what's happening behind it. No. She'd said, I told the police everything I knew. Chen had noted the specific quality of the silence that followed. The way a pause can have texture. The third call was different. Jenna, Chen said, I know you saw something. I know because of the truck records and the patrol logs and 14 years of working this case, and because of the specific way you've been answering questions that I've been asking people in this investigation for a very long time. I'm not calling to trap you. I'm calling because Kaylee's family has been waiting for this answer since 2010 and they deserve it. And because your daughter deserves to grow up in a world where people tell the truth when it matters. The silence on the other end of the call was 12 seconds long. Chen counted. Then Jenna Williams said, I need to see you in person. They met at a coffee shop in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood on March 22, 2024 at 9 in the morning. Jenna's choice of location, neutral ground, public space, the kind of place where you can have a hard conversation without it being the only thing in the room. She arrived first. She was sitting at a corner table when Chen walked in, and Chen recognized her from the 2010 photographs even through the 14 years that had changed them both. Same posture, same quality of watchfulness. The specific alertness of someone who has been waiting for something bad to arrive and has developed the habit of scanning rooms for it. Jenna had her hands around a coffee cup she wasn't drinking from. Her hair was down. She looked like someone who had not slept properly in some time, not days, but years. The particular exhaustion that is not physical but structural. A tiredness that has been carried so long it has become part of how you stand. Chen leaned forward. Tell me everything. Jenna told her everything. She started at the beginning, not October 15th, but the beginning, which was the party and the cigarette, and stepping onto the porch at 11:30 p.m. for what was supposed to be 2 minutes of cold air, and seeing Kaylee below on the street and watching the white campus security truck pull up. She described it the way you describe something you have been over 10,000 times, with the exhausted precision of total recall. Every detail intact because she had never allowed herself to forget any of it, because forgetting felt too much like letting herself off the hook, and some part of her had understood since 2010 that she did not get to be let off the hook for this. She described Kaylee turning toward the truck. The conversation she couldn't hear, the passenger door opening, Kaylee getting in. She described thinking, good, she got a ride home. She described going back inside the party. She described waking the next morning to Kaylee's empty bed and thinking she'd gotten up early for Starbucks. Same routine, every morning vanilla latte, 7:52 a.m., the barista who already knew her order, and then the calls and the security officer at the door. And the moment she understood that Kaylee was not at Starbucks and was not coming back, and the simultaneous understanding that she knew something, she had seen something, and the calculation that had taken approximately 90 seconds and had cost a family 14 years. If I tell them now, I'll have to explain why I didn't say immediately. The longer I wait, the harder this gets. She described the lie she told Detective Chen in October 2010. She described 14 years of telling it, by omission, by absence, by the specific daily maintenance of not saying what she knew. She described Emma. Emma in her arms at 3 in the morning, 6 weeks old, and the thought arriving with the clarity of something that had always been there. What if someone knew where Emma was and didn't tell me? Chen sat across from her and listened. She did not take notes during the confession. She had a recorder running. She had told Jenna it was running, and Jenna had said, good, I want it on record, and she did not interrupt. She let Jenna speak for 40 minutes all the way through. From the porch to the present moment, the whole architecture of the 14-year silence. When Jenna stopped, the coffee shop was filling up around them, the ordinary morning noise of a city going about its business. Espresso machines and conversation and the scrape of chairs. And Chen looked across the table at this woman who had been 23 years old when she made the worst decision of her life, and had spent the 14 years since building her life on top of it. And she said the only thing she could say, which was, "Thank you for telling me." Jenna shook her head. 14 years too late. Yes, Chen said. She did not soften it. But now. The Anchorage Police Department executed the arrest warrant for Derek Allen Vaughn on May 8, 2024 at 6:45 p.m. Alaska Standard Time, 3 hours after Jenna's confession was recorded, 2 hours after Chen had called the extradition team, 1 hour after the warrant was signed by a Whatcom County judge. 2 officers approached him in the Dimmond Center parking lot as his shift ended. He was walking to his car, keys in hand, in the specific unhurried way of a person whose evening is already planned and contains nothing complicated. Drive home, make dinner, turn on the game. He did not see them coming. One officer said, "Derek Vaughn." He turned around. His face did the thing that faces do when the world you have been living in collides with the world that has been pursuing you. A fractional reorganization, something behind the eyes shifting. The expression of a man who had calculated 14 years ago that distance was safety and was now discovering in a parking lot in Anchorage with his car keys in his hand that he had been wrong. "Yes," he said. His voice was level. The officer produced the warrant. "Derek Allen Vaughn, you are under arrest for the murder of Kaylee Rose Martinez." He said nothing. He did not resist. He put his hands where they were asked to put them, and he stood while the handcuffs were applied, and he stood while he was placed in the patrol car, and he sat in the back of the car and looked at the Anchorage winter evening out the window with an expression that the arresting officers would later describe separately in the same word, blank, not shocked, not devastated, not the way an innocent man looks when he is wrongly arrested, just blank, the look of a calculation that has run its course. He was extradited to Bellingham, Washington the next day, arriving on May 9, 2024. He was booked, photographed, printed. He was placed in a cell. He asked for a lawyer. He said nothing else. He would say nothing else for 48 hours until the truck evidence came back. Derek Vaughn was presented with the evidence on May 10, 2024. He confessed that same day. The forensic team had been working the 2010 campus security truck since February, located in a Bellingham impound lot where vehicles involved in open investigations were held, Derek's truck having been flagged as potentially significant when Chen's 2010 notation about his resignation had resurfaced in the active case file. The truck had been held for years, technically, as part of the cold case evidence preservation, a procedural continuity that had happened almost by accident. The truck impounded and never released because the case was never officially closed. 14 years of sitting in an impound lot. The forensic team applied luminol to the truck's interior. The carpet, though it had been vacuumed and treated, the 1:47 a.m. car wash. The thorough cleaning lit up under ultraviolet light in the passenger area and the rear cargo section. The blood evidence was trace, degraded by time and cleaning product but present. DNA analysis, Kaylee Rose Martinez. The carpet fibers from the truck matched fibers recovered from the clothing Kaylee was wearing when her remains were found. Fiber-to-fiber comparison consistent across both samples. And in the truck's door panel, the passenger door specifically, the interior side, a partial fingerprint, small, degraded, but a partial. Kaylee's, the fingerprint of a person pulling a handle that would not open. Derek Vaughn was presented with the evidence on June 3, 2024. He confessed on June 5. Furthermore, the forensic unit had recovered the truck's 2010 GPS navigation data from an archived campus security server. A digital record that had been preserved automatically as part of the department's fleet management system and had been sitting, untouched, in a server archive for 14 years. The data was unambiguous. It placed Derek Vaughn's campus security vehicle at the Cascade Hall construction site from 11:47 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. on the night of October 15, 2010. The same window, the same location, the digital footprint of a man who had calculated that physical evidence could be cleaned but had not considered that the truck itself had been recording where he went. The confession lasted 4 hours. He said he hadn't planned it. He said he saw her walking alone and made an impulsive decision. He said when she tried to get out of the truck, he panicked. He said, "I didn't mean for it to go that far." He said these things in the specific language of a man who is still, even in confession, trying to minimize the series of choices he made. The offer of the ride, the wrong direction, the child locks, the construction site, the burial, the log entry, the resignation, the car wash. The 14 years in Alaska, trying to compress those choices into a single moment of panic rather than the sequence of deliberate decisions they were. Each choice had been a choice. He had made all of them. The detective who took the confession noted in his report that Derek Vaughn, throughout the 4-hour session, never once said Kaylee's name. The trial of Derek Allen Vaughn began on September 9, 2024, in Whatcom County Superior Court. It was the kind of September that Bellingham does well. The air finally dry after the long damp of summer, the light coming in at a lower angle that made everything look considered, the mountains visible for the first time in months. Students were arriving at Whatcom Community College for fall semester, loading up dorms, carrying boxes up the stairs of buildings across campus. Not Cascade Hall, that building was closed indefinitely, its ground floor still a documented crime scene. Its future as a place where students lived and slept and complained about the heating uncertain, in a way that nobody had fully decided how to address. The institution was still in the process of understanding what it had been, unknowingly, for 9 years. Rosa Martinez wore the same black dress she had worn to every press conference since February. She sat in the first row of the gallery, on the left side, directly behind the prosecution table. And she did not look at Derek Vaughn unless she was choosing to look at him, which she did occasionally, deliberately, with the specific intentionality of a woman who has decided that the man who killed her daughter does not get to be looked away from. He sat at the defense table in a gray suit that his attorney had presumably chosen for him, and he looked at the table in front of him most of the time, and when he looked up, he had the same expression the Anchorage officers had described. Blank, not remorseful, not defiant, simply present in the room without any visible acknowledgement of what the room meant. Daniel sat beside Rosa. He cleared his throat once, twice, 3 times at the beginning of each session before the judge entered, as though clearing the day's emotion from the passage before the work began. He held Rosa's hand. He had been holding her hand in one way or another. Since 2010, not continuously, not without interruption, the years between had broken them in ways that took other years to repair. But they were here together, which was what mattered, which was the only thing that had ever mattered. Marco sat on Rosa's other side. He was 29 years old, and he had grown into a version of himself that Kaylee would have recognized and been proud of. Steadier than he'd been at 20, than he'd been at 25. The years of difficulty he'd moved through having given him a quality of roundedness that expressed itself in the way he occupied space. Fully, without apology, without the nervous energy of someone who hasn't figured out yet where he belongs. He had figured it out. It had cost him. He had paid what it cost. He kept his phone in his pocket. The quotes folder was in there. He didn't need to open it to know what it said. The prosecution's case took 11 days. It was thorough in the way that prosecutions are thorough when the evidence is layered. The GPS data placing Derek's truck at the Cascade Hall construction site from 11:47 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. The luminol results showing trace blood evidence in the truck's passenger area. The carpet fiber match between the truck and Kaylee's clothing. The partial fingerprint on the interior door panel. Jenna Cooper's testimony about watching Kaylee get into the truck at 11:32 p.m. The evidence technicians testified. The forensic anthropologist testified. The medical examiner testified about the hyoid bone fracture, about the defensive wounds, about what those injuries meant in physical terms. What they meant in human terms was not something medical testimony could fully address, and everyone in the courtroom understood this. Detective Chen testified on the 3rd day. She was 61 years old, and she had been waiting to sit in that chair for 14 years, and she did it with the composure of someone who has rehearsed nothing and prepared for everything. The original investigation, the lead she'd flagged and not followed far enough. The box she'd kept in her home office. The cross-reference search in March 2024 that had found Derek Vaughn at the same Anchorage address where he'd been living unremarkably for 14 years. She testified for 4 hours. At the end of her testimony, the prosecutor asked, "Is there anything else you'd like the court to know?" Chen paused. Kaylee Martinez was 19 years old, she said. She wanted to be a teacher. She was saving money to buy a car. She texted her brother every morning. She called her mother every Sunday at 6 o'clock. She stopped. The courtroom was quiet. "That's what I want the court to know." 0315 checked all buildings, all secure, quiet night. DV written 4 hours after he killed her. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Rosa sat in the courthouse hallway during deliberations. She had brought nothing to read, nothing to do with her hands. She sat in a plastic chair against the wall with her hands in her lap and her eyes on the middle distance. And she did not speak much. People came and sat with her: Daniel Marco, Sarah Chen, the high school friend who had flown in from Seattle, Beth Morrison, who had driven from Spokane, the children's librarian who had named her own daughter Kaylee in 2015, and who sat beside Rosa and held her hand and said nothing. Because there was nothing to say that the waiting didn't already contain. At 4:47 p.m. on September 23rd, the jury returned. The four men stood. Rosa's hand tightened in Daniel's. "On the charge of murder in the first degree, how do you find?" "We find the defendant guilty." The courtroom did not erupt. It exhaled. A long, collective release of breath that had been held for varying lengths of time, 14 years for some, 6 hours for others. The whole span of a life for Rosa Martinez, who had known since October 17, 2010, since the Sunday the phone didn't ring, that her daughter was gone and someone had taken her. She had known. She had spent 14 years in the specific purgatory of knowing without being able to prove, of carrying a certainty the world had not yet confirmed. The verdict did not give her new information. It gave the world's confirmation of what she had already known. A sound tore out of Rosa Martinez, a single piercing sob that was half scream, 14 years of breath leaving her body all at once. She collapsed forward, her hands going to her face, and Daniel caught her the way he had been catching her for 14 years. And she pressed into him and let the sound come, the sound no one should have to make and that she had been holding back, containing, managing, for so long that when it finally broke through, it had the quality of something structural giving way. Beside her, Marco pressed his face into his hands. Not hiding, just needing a moment of darkness and interiority, a moment not for display. Daniel cleared his throat once and didn't finish the sequence, just once. Then he put his arm around Rosa and she leaned into him and they sat like that while the room moved around them. Derek Vaughn at the defense table did not move, did not change expression. His attorney placed a hand on his arm. He looked at the table. He still had not said her name. Derek Vaughn received life without the possibility of parole on October 28, 2024. Jenna Cooper, who had entered a plea agreement in exchange for her testimony, the terms of which the prosecution had negotiated with the understanding that without her confession there was no case. Without her statement, there was no timeline. Without her finally deciding to speak, the GPS data and the fiber evidence and the luminol results were pieces of a puzzle with no picture on the box. Received 3 years of probation and 500 hours of community service. She did not go to prison. She went home to Mike and Emma and the apartment in Capitol Hill, and the knowledge that she would spend the rest of her life being both the person who had helped convict Derek Vaughn and the person who had waited 113 days to do it. The math doesn't balance. It isn't supposed to. Derek took Kaylee's life. Jenna took 14 years of truth from her family. Both were thefts, but of different magnitudes in different moral registers. And the law, which is a system built to distinguish between magnitudes, treated them accordingly: life in prison for one, probation for the other. The prosecutor in his sentencing remarks said, "Without Jenna Cooper's confession, Derek Vaughn would still be in Anchorage. We needed her testimony for conviction. Her silence was a crime, her speaking was the key. So she served both roles, accessory through inaction, then witness through action." At the sentencing hearing, Rosa Martinez was asked if she wanted to address Jenna Cooper directly. She stood for a long moment. "I forgive you," Rosa said, "because you were 19 and you were scared and you didn't understand what you were letting happen." She paused. "I don't forgive you for staying scared for 14 years, for coming to my daughter's vigils, for watching my family search." She sat down. "Both things are true," she said. "I've learned to live with things that are both true." This is what moral complexity looks like when it has a face and a name and a courtroom and a family that has been waiting 14 years to say it out loud. Not resolution, but acknowledgement. Not the closing of a wound, but the honest examination of how it was made and by whom and what it cost. Derek showed no remorse. Jenna showed nothing but the question of which deserves mercy, the one who took the life, or the one who could have shortened the grief, is not a question the law is designed to answer. It is a question that will outlast the sentencing, outlast the probation, outlast the prison term, because it belongs to the category of questions that don't resolve so much as continue, carried forward by the people who have to live inside them. The victim impact statements were read on October 15, 2024. The date was not coincidence. The Martinez family had requested it specifically. 14 years to the day. The same October, the same Bellingham sky, the same quality of light that had been present that morning in 2010, when Here Comes the Sun played from a phone alarm and a 19-year-old girl made her bed with hospital corners, and walked 4 blocks to Starbucks and ordered a vanilla latte with extra foam and sat in a corner booth and crossed items off an index card with a purple pen, unaware that the day she was living in was the last ordinary day of her life. Rosa spoke first. She had written her statement in the yellow-green light of the kitchen, at the table by the phone, the way she had written everything important for the past 14 years. She had written it in Spanish first and translated it herself, because some things she needed to say in the language she had arrived in this country speaking, the language that was Kaylee's other language, the one they had spoken together at home, and that Kaylee had been planning to teach in a bilingual preschool that would never exist now, but that Rosa had decided would exist in other forms, through other people, because of Kaylee's name attached to it. She spoke for 12 minutes. She described Kaylee's dimple and her purple pen and her mismatched socks and the way she hummed while she walked and the 3 taps she gave the cross necklace every morning. She described the Sunday calls. She described $2, $400 saved in a jar for a car. She was going to buy her own car by 21, and the gray WW sweatshirt worn every Friday as an act of faith in the future. She described standing at a kitchen window every Sunday for 14 years waiting for a call that never came. She described the specific texture of not knowing. Not grief exactly, because grief requires a confirmed loss. And she had spent 14 years in the anteroom of grief, the place before the confirmation where every day is both the day you might find out and the day you might not. "My daughter is buried now," Rosa said. "She has a grave. She has a place I can go and put flowers and say her name out loud to the ground and know she's there. For 14 years she didn't have that. I didn't have that." She held the silver cross necklace in her hand while she spoke, not wearing it. Holding it, the chain pooled in her palm, the cross between her fingers, the necklace that had come back from the ground, the necklace that had stayed when everything else was taken. "Kaylee wore this every day," Rosa said. "She touched it when she was nervous, 3 times, always 3 times. She was wearing it when they found her, 14 years underground, and she still had it." She looked at the necklace for a moment. "She always did what I told her," Rosa said. "I told her to wear it and she wore it." She sat down. Daniel did not speak from a written statement. He stood and cleared his throat once, twice, 3 times, and then he said, "I built a bench for my daughter. It's in our backyard. I built it in October 2010 because I needed to do something with my hands and I didn't know what else to do. Her name is on it. I sit there sometimes and I don't say anything, I just sit." He paused. "I'd like to be able to sit there now and know she has justice. I'd like to know if that makes it feel different." He sat down. "I think it will," he said, to no one in particular. "I think it will feel different, I don't know yet." Marco stood last. He was 29 years old and he looked like his sister in the way that siblings look like each other, not identically, not obviously, but in the way the same materials arranged by the same family produce recognizable echoes. The same brown eyes, the same quality of concentrated attention, the same way of going still when something mattered. He held his phone in his left hand. He did not look at Derek Vaughn, he looked at the judge, he looked at the room. He said, "On the morning of October 15th, 2010, my sister texted me at 7:55 a.m. I'd texted her the night before asking about an essay. I said." He looked down at his phone at the screenshot he had kept for 14 years, the screenshot that had its own folder. "Did you finish that essay yet? Teach me your ways, lol." His voice was steady. She wrote back, "Not yet, tomorrow, you can help this weekend." I replied, "Deal, love you weirdo." He stopped. "She read it, I can see the read receipt." She never replied. I don't know what she was doing when she read it. Getting ready, probably. She was always getting ready in exactly 12 minutes. He paused. "I've thought about that text for 14 years. I've thought about the fact that my last words to my sister were 'love you weirdo' and she never got to say it back, and for a long time that felt like the worst thing, like the worst possible way for it to end." He looked down at the phone. "But then I thought she read it. She read it right before she left for class, before the day that was going to take her, and the last thing she saw from me was 'love you.'" He looked up. "That's what I have, that's what he couldn't take. He could take everything else, her future, her plans, her preschool, her car, her Sundays with my mother, 14 years of being known and remembered by the people who loved her, but he couldn't take that she read it. He couldn't take that she knew." He sat down. He did not look at Derek Vaughn. Derek Vaughn did not look at him. The sentence was announced on October 28, 2024, life without the possibility of parole. Derek Vaughn was led from the courtroom in the same expressionless way he had been led into it, and the door closed behind him and the room began to empty, and Rosa Martinez sat in her seat for a long time after most people had left. Not because she needed more time, just because she was there and she had earned the right to sit as long as she needed to in the room where her daughter had finally been given the one thing that could be given her. The acknowledgement on the record in the formal language of justice that she had existed, that she had mattered, that what had been done to her was a wrong that the world had decided to name. It was not enough, it was what there was. She's no longer under the building, but she'll always be remembered there. On October 12, 2024, they buried her. The funeral mass at St. Joseph's Catholic Church filled every pew and spilled into the vestibule and out onto the steps, where people stood in the October cold with their coats buttoned and their heads bowed and listened to the service through the open doors. Rosa had chosen a white casket. She had spent a long time on this decision, not because it was difficult, but because she wanted it to be right. Wanted every element to say something true about who Kaylee was and what she had meant and how the family intended to hold her memory going forward. White for the clarity of her. White for the morning light she had always tried to wake into. The casket was draped entirely in purple flowers. Rosa had specified this to the funeral director without explanation, and the director had not asked for one, because some things explain themselves. The purple of the backpack that had broken through 14 years of concrete, the purple of the gel pen that crossed items off index cards, the purple that was the color most associated with Kaylee Rose Martinez by everyone who had loved her, who had known her, who had watched her organize the world into manageable pieces with a specific pen in a specific color, because that was how she made sense of things. When they lowered her into the ground in Mount Vernon, in the plot Rosa had chosen 3 years ago when she had allowed herself to begin acknowledging the probability she had never stopped resisting, the headstone was already in place. Simple granite, her name, her dates. And below them, in the careful lettering Rosa had chosen after long deliberation, her light still shines. It was not under concrete, it was under open sky, under October clouds. Under the particular gray-blue light of the Pacific Northwest that Kaylee had walked through every morning of her college life, humming softly, her left shoe squeaking on wet pavement, the whole ordinary world spread out around her and available and hers. It was hers again now, in a different way. But hers. The memorial bench was installed in December 2024 in the garden at the northeast corner of Cascade Hall, the corner. Rosa had asked for this specifically. She wanted the place to be named, not avoided. She wanted students walking into that building to pass a plaque that said Kaylee Rose Martinez, 1991-2010, and to know that the building they were going home to had a history that asked something of them. That being in a place where a life was taken created an obligation, however small, to know the name of the person who had been taken there. The plaque reads, "Her light still shines." Rosa visits on Sundays. Not every Sunday. She has begun, tentatively and imperfectly, the process of allowing Sunday to be something other than the day the call doesn't come, to be just a day to carry ordinary things in it. But most Sundays, she sits on the bench and she talks to Kaylee the way she talks to her in the kitchen and the car and the garden at home, the one-sided conversation that has replaced the Sunday 6 o'clock calls. That is not a replacement at all, but is what remains, is what love becomes when the person it's for is no longer present to receive it directly. She touches the silver cross, 3 taps, a ritual that was Kaylee's and is now also hers. She wore this, Rosa thinks, every time. She wore this and touched it this way, and it stayed with her. It came back. Jenna Cooper enrolled in a campus safety advocacy program in November 2024. As part of her community service, she speaks at orientation sessions for incoming students about bystander intervention, about what it means to say something when you see something, about the specific calculus of silence that she knows better than anyone in the room. She does not tell her full story. She is still in the process of understanding whether that is here to tell publicly or privately, but she tells enough of it to make the abstract concrete. The porch, the cigarette, the truck pulling up, the thought that passed through her mind in 30 seconds and cost a family 14 years. She does not describe herself as a cautionary tale. She describes herself as someone who made a choice and then kept making it and who has to live inside the consequences of that. She goes home to Emma after these sessions. Emma is 2 years old. She has Rosa Martinez's number in her phone. Rosa gave it to her at the sentencing without explanation, pressing it into her hand after the hearing, and Jenna had looked at her and Rosa had said, "For when you need it." She has not called it. She may someday. Marco works with families of missing persons now. He started the year after Kaylee was found, initially as a volunteer, then more formally. He is good at it in the way you are good at things that come from having survived them. He knows what to say in the first week and what not to say in the 5th year. He knows that the question families ask, "Is she alive?" is not really a question about the probability of a good outcome, but about whether hope is still a reasonable thing to carry. He knows that both the answer yes, probably, and the answer no, probably not are equally a form of love, if delivered with the understanding that the family gets to decide how much truth they can hold and when. He keeps his nieces close, Daniel's neighbors' granddaughters who call him Tio Marco and bring him drawings, and teaches them to check in, not because they need to, because the ritual of checking in is its own form of love, its own daily refusal of silence. He still opens the quotes folder sometimes. Not on October 15th specifically. He has been working slowly on releasing the date from its grip, on allowing it to be a day in October rather than the day in October. But sometimes, when he needs to hear her voice, which is what the texts are, her voice, her particular cadence, her way of pushing him forward from the distance of a phone screen. Monday is just a minute away from Sunday. Make it count. He has made it count. He is still making it count. He intends to keep making it count for as long as there are Mondays. Detective Chen drives past Cascade Hall sometimes. On the route she still takes through the campus out of habit, the route she has been taking since 1995. She does not stop. She slows a little near the memorial bench because slowing is different from stopping, and she has not fully decided yet what she needs to do with this case now that it is over. Now that it is over in the legal sense while being far from over in the human sense, which is the sense that matters to her, which is the sense that always mattered to her even when she couldn't say so in a professional context without qualifying it. She found her. That's what she comes back to. 14 years and she found her. Not fast enough, the other voice says, the voice that belongs to the notation in the file, the follow-up. probably unrelated, that she will carry for the rest of her life as the specific weight of a question she asked and didn't press hard enough. But found, the other voice says back. Found. Brought home, named in court, in the formal record, in the public memory. That's something. It is something. It is not enough. Both are true. Kaylee Rose Martinez was 19 years old on October 15, 2010. She would be 33 now, 33, if things had gone differently, if a campus security guard had driven her the 6 blocks to her dorm and let her out at the entrance and watched her walk inside. If she had taken the stairs counting to 16 and unlocked room 247 and touched the doorknob twice and set her purple backpack down by the door and gotten into the bed she had made with hospital corners that morning. The bed she never came back to. She would be 33, and by now she would probably have her own classroom, her own preschoolers learning in Spanish and English simultaneously. Small children absorbing 2 languages at once the way children do, effortlessly, completely, without being aware of how remarkable they are. She would have her car bought before she was 21, saved for it the way she saved for everything, carefully, tracking every dollar in her planner with her purple pen. She would be calling Rosa on Sunday at 6 o'clock. She would be texting Marco motivational quotes. She would be wearing her cross necklace and touching it 3 times before anything important and ordering vanilla lattes with extra foam and smelling faintly of strawberry hand lotion. The particular warmth of it rising from her hands every time she applied it. 10 times a day minimum, hands get dry, and making beds with hospital corners, and humming softly while she walked and living the particular, specific, unrepeatable life that was hers and that was taken from her on a dark street in Bellingham, Washington, by a man who saw her walking alone and decided that her life was something he could take. He was wrong. He was wrong in the way that killers are always wrong, in the way that reduces a person to an object, that mistakes a life for a possession, that confuses the power to end something with the power to own it. He could end her life. He could not own it. Kaylee Martinez's life belongs to the 33 years it contained in potential, to the preschoolers who will be taught by teachers she inspired, to the scholarship that carries her name toward the futures she never got to have, to the law that now requires better training for campus security personnel in Washington state, because her case made visible exactly how much damage a trusted uniform can do when the person inside it is not trustworthy. He could bury her under concrete. He could not keep her there. The purple backpack broke through. It always does. The Kaylee Martinez Memorial Scholarship for first-generation students has awarded funding to 47 students at Whatcom Community College since 2011. The most recent recipient is studying early childhood education. She is 19 years old. She does not know. Because she was born the year after Kaylee disappeared and has no particular reason to know the full history. Exactly why this scholarship carries the name it carries. Only that it exists, that it was created in memory of someone who wanted to be a teacher, that there is a photograph in the scholarship office of a girl with a dimple and a gray sweatshirt and her whole future still in front of her, still visible in the particular light of a summer afternoon at Pike Place Market. The girl studies in the campus library on Monday and Wednesday afternoons. She has found a corner table she likes. She makes lists on index cards when she needs to think something through. She doesn't know why index cards feel right to her. She uses them anyway. Kaylee Martinez was 19 years old. She had a plan, a purple pen, and a whole life still ahead of her. The least we can do is make sure her story doesn't disappear again. If this video moved you, share it. It's how cases like this reach the people who need to hear them. And if you want to stay with stories like Kaylee's, subscribe. New cases every week. I'll see you in the next one.